When everything collapses around you, there's a natural impulse to act immediately. You want to patch the holes, fix the problems, and convince yourself that if you move fast enough, the storm won't touch you. Most people get this backwards. The very first step isn't action, it's acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean resigning yourself to suffering. What it does mean is allowing yourself to feel, fully and honestly, the reality of what has happened. It means looking at the wreckage of your life, the shattered dreams, the relationships that have fallen apart, the projects that failed, and saying, "This is real. This is happening." It may seem paradoxical, but the moment you truly accept your situation, you gain control. Not the illusory control that comes from frantic activity, but the deeper control that comes from clarity. When you're in denial, when you try to distract yourself with busy work or false solutions, you are, in a way, enslaved by the chaos. You're reacting, not responding. Acceptance allows you to pause. It allows you to observe the situation without judgment, without the layers of guilt or shame that so often accompany failure. And when you pause, you create space. A space where thought is clear and decisions are conscious rather than compulsive. Emotionally, this is where the work begins. Pain, loss, and disappointment are not weaknesses. They are signals. Our culture teaches us to avoid them at all costs, to move on before we even stop. But emotional avoidance leaves deep, unseen scars. It drives us to repeat patterns of self-sabotage. To truly begin again, you must meet the feelings that accompany collapse. Cry if you need to. Sit in the silence. Name the fear, the anger, the grief. Let yourself feel the truth of the moment. It is only by acknowledging the depth of the fall that you can understand what needs to be rebuilt. Philosophically, acceptance is about truth. It is about seeing life as it is, not as you wish it were. When you resist reality, you fight a losing battle. You're trying to impose order on chaos before you've even understood the rules of the game. But when you accept the fall, you engage with life honestly. You recognize the impermanence of structures, the fragility of plans, and the unpredictable nature of human existence. Paradoxically, this recognition frees you. It allows you to step forward with courage because you are no longer shackled by illusion. And acceptance also reconnects you with your own resilience. When you stop running from reality, you begin to understand that you are stronger than you imagined. The storm does not define you. Your response does. By facing the pain, you train yourself to endure, to learn, to adapt. You begin to see the first glimmers of possibility, not because the world has changed, but because your perspective has shifted. So do not rush to fix what is broken. First, witness it. Sit with it. Own it. Let the weight of the collapse sink in, because in that sinking, in that raw acknowledgement, you are laying the foundation for authentic recovery. Acceptance is the beginning, the soil in which your new life can take root. Without it, any attempt at rebuilding is likely to crumble under the pressure of denial or avoidance. When you accept fully, profoundly, without resistance, something remarkable happens. You stop being a victim of circumstance, and you start becoming the conscious architect of your life. And that is where true beginning starts. When everything has fallen apart, there is a very human impulse to regain control. You want to grasp the situation, impose order, fix what feels broken. And at first glance, it seems logical. If I can just control this, I can stop the pain. But here's the paradox that most people miss. The frantic pursuit of control is often the very thing that keeps us trapped in chaos. We mistake action for progress, movement for mastery. In truth, control is an illusion. Life is not a puzzle we can solve perfectly, nor a problem we can neatly tidy away. The world resists our efforts, and the harder we cling, the more resistance we create. To begin again authentically, you must first recognize the boundaries of control. There are elements in life we can influence, and there are elements we cannot. Understanding the difference is not about giving up. It is about orienting yourself toward reality. When you chase after what you cannot control, you expend energy, attention, and courage on a mirage. Your mind becomes a battlefield of frustration and anxiety, spinning in circles, trying to hold on to things that, by their nature, slip through your fingers. This is where so many people fail. They act not out of clarity, but out of fear. Psychologically, the need to control stems from a deep desire for safety. When our lives collapse, uncertainty becomes unbearable, and the mind seeks a refuge in certainty, even if that certainty is illusory. But safety does not come from control, it comes from presence. It comes from cultivating the ability to face the unknown without being consumed by it. The moment you let go of the obsession with control, you free your mind to see options that were invisible when you were busy holding on. You begin to act from choice rather than compulsion. You begin to respond, not react. Philosophically, this is a lesson in humility and trust. Life is not a machine, and you are not its engineer. You cannot predict every curve, nor prevent every storm. But you can navigate with awareness. You can cultivate attentiveness, discernment, and patience. You can focus on the aspects of your life where your influence is real, your actions, your attitude, your commitments, and release the rest. This is not surrender and weakness. It is engagement and wisdom. The practical implication of this realization is profound. It changes the way you rebuild. Instead of trying to control outcomes, you focus on building capacities, resilience, clarity, discernment, and integrity. You invest in relationships with authenticity, not manipulation. You pursue goals aligned with values, not fear. And gradually, in this shift from control to presence, you discover that life flows differently. Opportunities appear where you had only seen obstacles. Solutions emerge where you had only seen chaos. And there is a deep emotional liberation in this process. Anxiety fades because it is born of the illusion of control. Frustration diminishes because it is rooted in expectations you cannot enforce. You find a steadiness, a quiet confidence that is not dependent on external conditions, but rooted in your capacity to engage with them wisely. You begin to trust yourself and the world enough to act, even in uncertainty. So stop chasing the illusion. Stop believing that control over outcomes is the pathway to security or meaning. Begin instead by cultivating clarity and presence. The more you can release the grip, the more you discover the strength that was always within you. The paradox is simple yet profound. You gain control not by holding tighter, but by letting go. And in that letting go, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You are free to act with intention, to move forward with courage, and to begin again in a way that is grounded, resilient, and deeply alive. Once we've accepted the fall and loosened our futile grasp on control, a profound question emerges. What matters most? What is the essence of life I want to build upon when everything else has crumbled? Reconnecting with our core values is not a sentimental exercise. It is the compass by which we navigate the chaos of renewal. When external structures collapse, they leave a void, and into that void rush countless distractions, societal pressures, fleeting comforts, and the voices of others telling us what we should do. Without a clear understanding of what we truly stand for, we are like a ship without a rudder, drifting aimlessly even as we labor to rebuild. Core values are not abstract ideals. They are the principles that define our integrity, shape our decisions, and give life meaning. They are what we return to when the world seems devoid of certainty. And yet, most people spend their lives avoiding this question, substituting external approval for internal alignment. We chase careers, accolades, possessions, relationships, not because they are intrinsically meaningful, but because they promise security, validation, or identity. The collapse of these external markers is often jarring precisely because we never asked ourselves if they resonated with our inner truth. To begin again authentically, we must pause and ask, what do I truly believe in? What values am I unwilling to compromise, even in difficulty? For some, it is honesty or compassion or courage. For others, it is creativity, freedom, or justice. These are not negotiable luxuries. They are the skeleton of the life we must rebuild. When actions align with values, even small steps carry a sense of purpose and momentum. When actions conflict with values, no amount of effort will bring satisfaction, and our attempts at recovery will feel hollow. Psychologically, this reconnection with values is deeply healing. It restores coherence to the self. During collapse, fragmentation occurs. Our identity feels scattered, our motivations uncertain. Values act as anchors, reuniting the parts of ourselves that fear, grief, and confusion have separated. They provide clarity in moments of doubt, strength in moments of temptation, and direction when external guidance fails. Acting from values is the antidote to despair because it allows us to witness ourselves as agents of meaning rather than victims of circumstance. Philosophically, this is also a confrontation with freedom. When we align with our core values, we reclaim the domain over which we have real authority, our choices, our commitments, and our integrity. The world may impose limits, collapse structures, and create suffering, but it cannot dictate the principles by which we live. That is ours alone. And paradoxically, it is in this act of reclaiming values that the sense of possibility begins to return. Once we know what matters, even amid uncertainty, we can begin to act in ways that matter. Practically, reconnecting with core values transforms how we approach every decision. It filters our priorities, clarifies relationships, and illuminates goals that truly resonate. When faced with ambiguity, values guide us like a lighthouse through fog. They prevent us from rebuilding only for the sake of appearance or approval. And when every action is measured against these principles, even small steps feel aligned, meaningful, and regenerative. So, in the midst of collapse, do not rush toward rebuilding based on convenience or external expectation. Instead, turn inward. Ask the hard questions. Discern what is non-negotiable, what gives life its dignity, what you would defend even if the world resisted. Begin again from this center, because a life rebuilt upon clarity and integrity is resilient, purposeful, and deeply nourishing. When you live in alignment with your values, the chaos around you loses its power to dictate your direction. You are no longer merely surviving. You are living consciously, deliberately, and with profound agency. And that is where the true beginning lies. Once we have accepted the fall, released the illusion of control, and reconnected with our core values, the question becomes, how do we begin again in practice? How do we move from clarity and intention into the daily act of rebuilding our lives? The answer is deceptively simple, yet profoundly transformative. Start small. Begin with habits, tiny, intentional acts that reinforce stability, competence, and alignment with what matters most. Most people make the mistake of thinking recovery requires monumental effort or dramatic reinvention. But the truth is that transformation is rarely spectacular at first. It is incremental, subtle, and cumulative. Habits are the architecture of everyday life. They shape not just our actions, but our emotions, our self-perception, and even the neural pathways in our brain. Each intentional habit is a brick in the foundation of the self we are reconstructing. For example, choosing to make your bed, to drink water mindfully, to speak truthfully in small interactions. These are not trivial tasks. They are demonstrations of competence, of self-respect, and of agency. Over time, the repetition of small, meaningful actions compounds into profound change. The life you want to inhabit is not built in a single dramatic gesture. It emerges quietly, in the consistency of aligned behaviors. Psychologically, small habits carry an important advantage. They are achievable, and they bypass the paralysis of overwhelm. When everything in life feels shattered, the mind can freeze in the face of magnitude. The future can appear vast and threatening, and the sheer scale of rebuilding can trigger fear, despair, or avoidance. Intentional microhabits provide a way to engage without being overwhelmed. They give the nervous system evidence that action is possible, that competence exists even in small doses, and that progress is measurable. This is how confidence is rebuilt, one deliberate choice at a time. There is also a moral and emotional dimension to this practice. Small habits are a form of self-honoring. They signal to yourself that your life matters, that your intentions have weight, that your body and mind deserve care. In collapse, it is easy to neglect these basic acts and to fall into cycles of self-neglect or self-punishment. By consciously choosing to act in ways that support your well-being and integrity, you cultivate an inner environment of safety and respect. This, in turn, fuels resilience, creativity, and courage. Philosophically, building small habits is an acknowledgement of life's complexity. We do not control outcomes, but we can influence the quality of our daily actions. The grand sweep of existence is unpredictable, but the present moment is tangible. The present is where change is enacted, where recovery begins. When you act intentionally now, aligned with your values, the larger life gradually emerges from these concrete choices. Habit is the bridge between insight and reality, between intention and manifestation. Practically, the key is consistency, not intensity. It is better to meditate for 5 minutes every morning than to attempt an hour once and give up. It is better to write a paragraph daily than to struggle with a book-length project sporadically. These small, repeated actions wire the brain for competence, reinforce self-trust, and create momentum. Eventually, they lead to the capacity for larger, more ambitious endeavors, but only after the foundation is secure. So begin with the small. Let your habits be intentional extensions of your values, gentle affirmations of your agency, and steady steps out of chaos. Through them, you reclaim not just your life, but your belief in your own capacity to act meaningfully in the world. The truth is simple. Transformation is built in increments, not explosions. Every small, deliberate act is a statement to yourself that you are capable of rebuilding, capable of recovery, capable of becoming who you truly are. And in this steady accumulation, the fractured pieces of your life begin to align. This is the power of small habits. They are not just actions. They are the heartbeat of a life reborn. As we move from small, intentional habits into the next phase of rebuilding, we encounter a truth that most people resist. Growth is inherently uncomfortable. It is tempting to think that recovery, reinvention, or renewal should feel uplifting at every step, that progress is synonymous with ease. But the reality is far more nuanced. Transformation almost always demands that we lean into discomfort, confront uncertainty, and endure what the mind instinctively wants to avoid. The very sensations we interpret as threats, fear, anxiety, restlessness, even pain, are often the signals that growth is occurring. Discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a compass pointing toward what must be faced. When life falls apart, we naturally seek refuge in comfort, in routines, in the familiar, even if they are dysfunctional or limiting. The illusion of safety is seductive, but it keeps us trapped in the very patterns that led to collapse. To begin again authentically, we must challenge that impulse. We must be willing to stand in uncertainty, to experience fear without letting it dictate our choices, to explore areas of ourselves and the world that feel foreign or threatening. This is how resilience is forged. Psychologically, embracing discomfort rewires the relationship we have with ourselves. Many of us grow accustomed to avoidance, numbing sensations, distracting attention, or chasing constant reassurance. Avoidance creates short-term relief but long-term stagnation. When we instead lean into discomfort intentionally, whether it's sitting with difficult emotions, having honest conversations, or taking risks aligned with our values, we teach ourselves that we are capable of more than we believed. The nervous system gradually learns that challenge is not synonymous with danger, that vulnerability is not weakness, and that courage is cultivated, not innate. Philosophically, discomfort is the threshold between the old self and the new. The world we leave behind, the life that fell apart, was often a world of habits, expectations, and defenses that no longer serve us. Transformation requires shedding these layers, and shedding is rarely painless. Growth is a kind of stretching, a letting go of the familiar so that something greater can take root. The tension of change, the resistance of the mind, and the unease of uncertainty are not obstacles to be avoided. They are the very instruments that shape our evolution. Practically, this means leaning into experiences that challenge you. It means embracing tasks that test your patience, relationships that require honesty, and decisions that carry risk. It means understanding that fear, discomfort, and even failure are not signs of inadequacy. They are essential ingredients in the process of becoming. Each encounter with discomfort is an opportunity to practice presence, to act in alignment with values, and to reinforce the habits and capacities that will sustain the life you are building. There is also a profound emotional reward in this approach. When we stop avoiding discomfort, we discover that we are not fragile as we feared. We are resilient. We gain confidence not from avoiding pain, but from meeting it, sitting with it, and emerging on the other side. We learn that our capacity to endure, reflect, and choose is far greater than we imagined. And in this recognition, the meaning of suffering itself changes. What once felt like an obstacle becomes a teacher. What once felt like chaos becomes a laboratory for transformation. So do not seek to avoid discomfort. Do not mistake ease for progress or comfort for security. Growth demands presence and tension, courage and uncertainty, and the willingness to move forward even when every instinct urges retreat. The path forward is rarely smooth, but it is in the very friction of life that strength, insight, and authenticity are forged. And in embracing the discomfort of growth, you discover the profound truth that the life you're building is not only possible, it is already underway. You are not merely surviving, you are evolving, and every moment of unease is a step toward the self you are meant to become. As we come to the final stage of beginning again, it becomes clear that recovery is not simply about action, habits, or courage. It is also about perspective. Most people approach rebuilding with the wrong yardstick. They measure success by external markers, wealth, status, recognition, or even the approval of others. They define progress as climbing the ladder they once fell from, as if returning to the old structure will somehow restore them. But this is backward. True renewal requires that we redefine what success and progress mean, not in terms of what the world values, but in terms of what sustains the life we now seek to live. Redefining success begins with self-awareness. It begins with the recognition that the metrics we were taught to pursue may have contributed to our collapse in the first place. If your life was once dominated by the pursuit of approval, achievement, or control, then falling apart is an invitation to examine whether those were the right measures of fulfillment. To rebuild authentically, we must shift our attention inward toward the qualities that matter most: integrity, courage, resilience, clarity, and the capacity to act in alignment with our deepest values. These are the true indicators of progress, not what can be tallied, displayed, or compared. Psychologically, this redefinition is liberating. When we release the obsession with external validation, we release ourselves from constant anxiety, self-judgment, and competition. We are no longer slaves to the expectations of society or to the ghosts of our own past aspirations. Instead, we can focus on meaningful action, choices that foster connection, creativity, and self-respect. Progress becomes tangible because it is measured not by ephemeral accolades, but by lived integrity. Each step taken in alignment with our values, each moment of courage in the face of discomfort, each habit intentionally cultivated. These are the markers of real progress, even if the world fails to notice. Philosophically, redefining success requires humility and patience. Life does not unfold in linear trajectories, and the path to wholeness is rarely dramatic or immediately visible. True progress is iterative. It is found in the accumulation of small, consistent actions over time, in the repeated decision to face fear rather than evade it, in the conscious choice to live according to values rather than external scripts. This perspective allows us to see setbacks not as failures, but as feedback, as essential elements in the learning process of life itself. Progress, in this sense, is a measure of alignment and presence, not simply output or outcome. There is also an emotional dimension to this redefinition. By focusing on internal markers of growth, we cultivate resilience against the inevitable fluctuations of fortune. We learn to celebrate competence over applause, effort over result, and presence over pretense. The anxiety that comes from constantly measuring ourselves against the world diminishes because our sense of achievement is now grounded in something unshakable. The life we choose to live, moment by moment, in conscious alignment with our values. Practically, this means that every action, every decision, every habit becomes a measure of progress. It means noticing the subtle shifts in your ability to respond with clarity, to endure discomfort, to maintain integrity under pressure. It means redefining the finish line as the ongoing cultivation of self-awareness, authenticity, and resilience rather than an external milestone. By doing this, you reclaim the power to determine your own path and to assess your own growth honestly, without distortion or comparison. Ultimately, redefining success is not just a mental exercise. It is the culmination of the journey of beginning again. When you measure progress by internal alignment rather than external reward, You step fully into the life you are building. You no longer seek to restore what was lost, but to create what is meaningful. You no longer chase illusions. You act from clarity. And in that clarity, in that conscious recalibration of values and purpose, you discover that the most profound success is the life lived intentionally, courageously, and authentically. Redefining success allows you to see that even amid collapse, even in the midst of uncertainty, you are not behind, broken, or failing. You are becoming. And that is the ultimate measure of progress, to be fully present, fully engaged, and fully alive in the act of building a life that matters.